And this one is also our Discord pick of the week. And it's no surprise because Nemesis is a game that has been out in the past, and this is actually the third iteration on the game. This one also makes some substantial changes and improvements to that core system. So rather than explain how the original games play, I'll just try to let you know how this specific game plays. Although there is still a lot of overlap since they do essentially share that same DNA. But if you're not familiar with any of these games in the franchise, this is essentially a cooperative game where players are going to be working together to fight back against an alien threat. Each of the games does play a little bit different from each other, but in this version of the game, players are all going to be playing as different marine specialists, each with their own unique set of stats and deck of cards, but players are all going to be working together, taking the fight to the alien's nest. Since players are hardened marines backed by the support and resources that the military has to offer, you're going to be entering this game with some of the best gear and weaponry that you have ever seen across any of these Nemesis games, but that doesn't mean that the game's going to be any easier because, like I said, you are entering the aliens' territory and all the stakes are going to be much higher. Something that's neat about the way that the characters work in this game that's a little bit different from the predecessors is that you do get this really neat character board. You have your health outlined at the top of the board, and your health is actually broken into 3 different sections. There's healthy, injured, and then heavily injured, and then of course after that you are dead. But the cool thing here is that once your health enters into one of these more critical sections, you're going to be adding a injury card into the section before it. This is going to be granting you some sort of negative effect that you're going to have to deal with until you're able to heal up and get rid of that negative effect. The board also has a few different areas where you can slot in different tactical items like extra ammo, grenades, or oxygen, and players do have a wheel on the right hand side of the board where they're going to be tracking the current oxygen that they have available in their tanks, and of course you'll be using that up anytime that you're in an area that doesn't have life support. Of course, players can use their various actions and the computers available to them in the various rooms in order to activate the life support in various areas in order to help make survival a little bit easier. Another neat aspect of these Marines that wasn't available in the previous editions of this game is that each of the Marines will also have a certain number of stars associated with them, and you can see that underneath their name, and that essentially means their rank amongst the group. The cool thing about this is that if you have more stars than another player, that means that you can issue them orders. This is a really nice thing because it allows you to tell them to perform an additional action out of their turn because you ordered them to. And there's a bunch of different actions that players can perform, but most of them will be movement or attack actions or interacting or searching various tiles that you are currently occupying. Each scenario provides a mission goal that players are going to be working together to try and complete, but there's also going to be some personal goals that players can complete along the way as well in order to get some special bonuses or gear cards added into their supply. At the start of a scenario, all the players are going to be starting on the same tile, and then as players move and explore the areas around them, you're going to be adding more tiles into play. The way this works is that each time you take that explore action, you're going to be drawing a card from the explore deck, and it's going to be telling you what type of tiles and corridors you're going to be adding onto that tile. This can have different effects depending on the region of the board that you're currently in, and it might involve you drawing specific tiles from a specific stack. But a neat thing about these tiles is that each of the corridor tiles are going to be associated with a particular number. Anytime that a player makes a movement, you're always going to be rolling the noise die afterwards, and whatever value you roll with that die, you're going to be adding noise tokens to all the associated corridors that match that value. If there's already a noise token in that corridor, then instead you're going to be adding an enemy, and you're going to be randomly drawing an enemy token from the bag, and this bag's going to be starting with a predetermined set of enemies depending on the scenario, but more and more difficult ones can be added throughout the scenario. But you're essentially going to be drawing that token. It's going to tell you what types of aliens are going to spawn, and some of these tokens do allow for spawning multiple enemies at once. A couple things to note about this is that there is also a token for the alien queen, and she can get eventually added to that draw bag, and if she does get drawn out, she spawns on the board just like any other alien. But the way that she's different is that at the start of the game, you're going to be taking the alien queen cards and then randomly discarding 3 of them, making her deck just a little bit different from game to game. And then anytime that she gets spawned, you're going to be drawing the next card from that stack, and then that card is going to dictate her behavior and what needs to be done done to defeat that instance of her. And then once you have spawned and defeated her enough times that you've gone through that entire stack, then and only then is she fully defeated in that particular game. One thing to note is that there is one side of the noise die that doesn't add noise tokens to the board, and if you do roll that icon, it can cause you to just spawn an alien instantly in the space that you are currently located. This means that the aliens are going to be ambushing you, but it can be prevented if you have previously secured that room, because there is an action to secure a room. When you do that, you're going to be putting a secure token on it, and that is going to prevent one ambush, but then that token is going to be discarded. So if it happened again in that same room, then you would be ambushed unless you had secured it again. But you are in an alien hive here, and players will end up having to fight the aliens in one way or another. And if you are in the same room as an alien, then you pretty much just have the shoot action that you can perform to target a single alien in that room. But if you are able to push those aliens out or position yourself so that you're adjacent to those aliens, you can actually burst fire your weapon, allowing you to attack multiple enemies at once, and also toss grenades with the same effect. And a neat aspect of this game is that the more damage you inflict to an enemy, the easier it is to kill them, because you're going to be trying to roll a certain value in order to defeat them, but the value you need to roll is a value below the current damage, which is a really simple and elegant way to do the combat, and I don't think I've seen that in any other board game. There's also a bunch of other interesting actions that players could perform on their turn, like using a computer console on their tile in order to control one of their rovers out on the board. There's only ever one rover in a given mission, but there's a whole bunch of different types of rovers that could be, each with their own individual benefits and bonuses that can help the players in various ways. But like I said, players are going to be doing all these actions to try and complete that mission goal, but that is not enough to win the game, because players also need to escape the hive. And there's two different ways that you can do this. You can either enter hibernation, or instead you can be extracted. And there is a ship that is going to be flying to come pick you up, so this is creating a bit of a timer for players to win the game. But if that ship arrives too early and you haven't completed your mission goal, then that is no longer an option. And also there could be some anti-aircraft guns that players need to disable before it gets there. There are some ways that you can slow down or speed up the arrival of the ship, but if that's no longer an option, there is also the hibernation option, and in order to be able to do that one, you need to protect it for the game, because if any of that hibernation chamber gets breached and destroyed, then it's not exactly going to be a safe option. But this campaign hasn't even started yet, and there is a ton of content on their campaign page, so I know there's a lot more to dig into with this one, and if you are interested in it, you can go ahead and check out their campaign page now. But of course, you can also follow along, get notified once it launches, and that is a crazy amount of people following along with this campaign already. So if you just want to check it out to see what sort of numbers this hits, that's probably worth it as well, but you can find a link to the campaign in the description below.